Hey guys, I thought a good video topic would be asking Bill Winke about the top 5 things that he feels are the best 5 things to look for if he was to go buy the perfect hunting property, or one that could be turned into the perfect hunting property. Do you have 5 top things that you would really look for in the event you were going to go buy a farm and turn it into the perfect hunting farm?
Yeah. I think that just to touch on that topic in general, it's pretty rare that you get all 5 of them, but you can certainly go for 5, right?
Yeah.
So the number one, I think, is if you're really serious about hunting, especially whitetail hunting, you need to be in a good neighborhood.
Yep.
That is so important. And it's not like, not only are they neighbors that you feel like you can get along with, which is important, especially if you're going to be moving there or spending a lot of time there, you need to have people that you're at least somewhat compatible with. But more than that, it really comes down to the hunting practices of the people in that area.
Yeah.
So if you can't buy a few thousand acres to control your destiny on your own, you're still going to be at the mercy of your neighbors.
Yep.
So you got to have an awful lot of land before the neighbors don't matter.
Good point.
So, I mean, I would try to find, this is the hardest part. I mean, if you're trying to figure out which piece of property to buy, the hardest thing to figure out is how good is this neighborhood? Unless you've done a lot of research ahead of time and you say, I want to buy in this area, you're going to get this listing that comes up and you're not going to have a lot of time to react to it. So somehow you've got to figure out as quickly as you can whether this is a good neighborhood.
Yep.
And that's the part that really scares me most.
And by the neighborhood, you're classifying that based on the deer quality, based on age and size in that area. Are they growing 150s, booners, 200s? And
it's more about what are they passing up. It doesn't necessarily mean antler size, because every part of the country is going to be a little bit different that way.
Yep.
We're fortunate here in the Midwest that we can say booners, 180s, 100, 200s.
Point.
But maybe you're in Pennsylvania and a 3.5-year-old buck is like really a high priority target.
Yeah.
So you just want to know what age class of deer most of the people in the area are shooting. So if you drive around and you stop in, you knock on a few doors and talk to a few people, you're probably going to get a sense of, like, hey, are you a deer hunter? Yeah, what do you guys shoot? Oh man, brown it's down, or whatever. You're going to start to get a sense of what that neighborhood is like. The only problem is, and this is where the really difficult part comes in for the buyer, is now you've tipped your hand that you're a potential buyer.
Yep.
And then all the neighbors are calling up, hey, there's a guy looking at Joe's farm or whatever.
Yep.
And that's not usually a good situation to be in when you're the buyer. So I think it's ticklish. I think you have to research it in advance, or you have to have somebody who doesn't have a chip in the game, like maybe a local game warden or somebody that you can trust that will tell you what's going on in that area.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you go knocking on doors, it's sort of like the cat's out of the bag.
Yep.
But so that's number one for sure in my mind is, you can't shoot big deer if there's no big deer in the area. And the only way there's going to be big deer in the area is if the other guys aren't killing them when they're young.
Yep.
So,
and I think from telling the real estate agent what you're after on that, like if that's what you're after is a top end deer hunting property, telling the real estate agent, I'm not interested in something that they're shooting, year and a half old, 2.5, 3.5, whatever that may be. Specifically tell them, this is what I'm after. I think is really important, so they're not just sending you properties and wasting your time and yours.
So and I think it also comes down to just the integrity of the agent themselves. And we've talked about that, with a different episode that we've done, is like, why do you like certain agents? Well, there are those out there that are going to say yes to any question that you've got if it means they're going to make a commission.
Right.
So you have to be a little bit careful too about, how much of a vested interest they have in being honest to you. And I'm not saying that you guys are not honest. I mean, obviously, I'm working with you, so I believe that you are. But there's enough of them that aren't.
Yeah.
It's like guys who buy timber.
Yeah.
There's a percentage of them that you got to watch.
Yeah.
And it's a
making sure the trail camera pictures are from there, making sure there's some distinguishable feature in the background, making sure the agent is not just trying to make a few bucks on you, making sure that they are actually representing your best interest.
Yep. And when you say it's a good neighborhood, they're going to say, oh yeah, it's a good neighborhood. They're not going to explain why or whatever. Most of them, Every neighborhood's a good neighborhood.
Right.
So either you got to have a really, really good agent that you have a lot of confidence in, or you've got to do that due diligence yourself. So we've been talking about the most important qualities of a great hunting property. We talked about the neighborhood as being the most important. So in my mind, the second most important is the composition of the property itself. Like what percentage of it is timber? In other words, how much of it is huntable? And that kind of goes to the experience of being on the property. Like I like being in a tree on a ridge overlooking a valley or whatever. I don't want to have it be a big CRP farm with one ditch going down the middle of it. Even if it's in a great neighborhood with big deer, that's not going to be my personal choice. So I think the actual composition of the property would be number 2 for me. And that comes down to, for me, it's a percentage of it that's huntable. And I like 75%. And it's a really nice number in my mind. Like 75% of this property is huntable.
Yep.
And 25% of it is going to be food. And I'm not looking for an income myself, generally. I'm buying a great hunting property. I'm not buying a great investment property. That's something else. But a great hunting property might be a great investment property. But my point is, you asked me what the features are of a great hunting property. I want it to be a lot of it huntable, the rest of it food plots.
So do you think, huntable 75%, so 75% timber, 25% open land that can be food plots?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my ideal. Maybe it's, you can vary a little bit, 70-30, whatever. But somewhere in that neighborhood, everybody talks about 50-50. Well, that might be great for an income property and a hunting property, morphing together.
Yep.
But now you've just limited the number of places that you can hunt, because a certain percentage of it you can't hunt because it's a field. So that's just my number 2. For somebody else, it might be completely different.
Because if it was 100% timber, for instance, you would have no place to really change anything unless you go start cutting down trees.
That's right. So that's why you want enough open in it, and I like it scattered. I would rather have the food toward the middle, ideally, and have the deer bedding out and moving in to feed. Because if you control the food, you control the deer. That's the end of the story on deer. Is like, find the food, find the deer, control the food, control the deer. So you want the food to be someplace where the neighbors aren't shooting into it.
Yeah.
So that would be ideal, is if the majority of the food is broken up into smaller patches towards the interior part of the property.
Okay.
So that's number 2. We'll come back again in another episode with the third most important piece of the perfect hunting property.